You're listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. I am your host, Al Mega, CEO of Comic Crusaders and Undercover Capes. In this show, I'm sitting down with creators from all walks of life to talk about inspiration, process, the lessons they've learned, and a whole lot more. WEPA, what up, man? It's your boy, Al Mega, and welcome back to a brand new Comic Crusaders episode where we're bringing you yet another fire episode where we share the light on the dopest creators in the game. That's right, baby. And today, we got a treat for you. I'm excited. We're talking heists. We're talking action. We're talking adventure, baby, and some serious storytelling magic. Let me tell you, we're going to talk to the man behind the incredible series called Three Thieves, all right? And his latest book, Tower of Treasure. Yeah, baby. It just hit the shelves from Papercutz, all right? So we're going to talk about big risks and even bigger rewards. And the trio that would definitely steal your heart, because it definitely did mine, literally, all right, baby? So we're going to dive deep with this legend, the one, the only Mr. Scott Chantler!
Woo!
Welcome. How you doing?
Thank you very much. That was a great high-energy intro. I like it.
Oh, bro. Well, you bring a high-energy book, man. For real, man. When I'm talking about adventure, you had me vested in characters like we were talking in the green room. I mean, this is fire. So we're going to be digging into your journey, my brother. You know, Comic Crusaders, man, let's talk about that crusade and who you became. Because this shit is fire. And you were telling me in the room, like, if I love this, man, am I in store for a whole lot more, apparently. So, and listen, yep. I'm with it. Take my money, baby. Take
Woo!
My money. All right.
Here it is.
Look, wait a minute. You know what? Wait, do that again. I want to put you on that first screen, make you even bigger. Show off that big, sexy book. Look at that thing right there.
Go get it, everybody. That
spine. Show off that spine, too.
Al says it's fire. So there you go. Go.
Look at that sexy. It is self-porn, folks, as you can see. It is self-porn. It is a sexy looking book, man. So again, thank you for coming out, brother. Origin story. Please tell us where you were originally from, and the most important question you ever hear in your life, Scott. What was the first thing in fandom overall that you ever fell in love with?
Oh, okay. I've lived here in Southern Ontario, Canada for my entire life. Various towns, moved around a little bit, but
please don't hate me because I live in the States. I know.
Oh, it's okay. You know how many? You know how many Americans have apologized to me in the last 2 months?
It's not my fault, bro. It ain't me, man.
It's kind of nice, actually. What was the other question? The first thing that got me into fandom and comics and stuff.
Yeah.
It's got to be Batman.
What version of Batman?
Like the 60s TV show.
Okay,
I'm not quite that old, but I was a little kid in the 70s, and so that TV show from the 60s was still in reruns on afternoon TV every day.
They reran that shit till the 80s, bro.
Yeah, exactly. So I was all over that TV show. At some point at a very young age, I obviously realized there were comics, and I'm certain that my first comics were Batman comics, which is probably true for a lot of people.
So in Canada, I mean, when you talk comics, how were you presented to it? Did you have like a local shop? Did you have family? Was it mommy or daddy that was like, yo, look what I found. Check this out.
Yeah, like I'm sure my first comics were probably from, like the magazine aisle at the grocery store, or like I'm old enough to have gotten my first comics that way. But by the time I was in my kind of early teens, comic shops were starting to pop up in the early 80s. Cool. I remember when the first comic shop popped up in my town. I was so excited. So I became a very good customer there for many years.
All right. So wait, growing up in Canada, in that geekdom that you were, invested in, and having fun with, were you a lone wolf, or did you have a tribe of fellow geeks, that you guys all nurtured each other?
Oh yeah. You tend to find each other fairly quickly, I think.
Cool.
There's at least one or two other kids at your school usually. That was good. We definitely found each other.
Oh, bet. All right. So you're not the lone wolf. Wonderful.
No, not at all. There was enough kids for a good little D&D game.
Even D&D. Oh, you guys went deep on nerd culture.
Oh yeah, exactly. I'm about the same age as those Stranger Things kids. So like in 1983, that's definitely what I was doing. I was in the basement with my friends.
How did you find D&D?
Oh, I love it. To this day, I was off it for a couple of decades, but once I had kids, I started trying to get them into it because it's such a great little storytelling exercise. A lot of the writers I know in comics or in prose or screenwriters or anything were all D&D players back in the 80s.
All right, okay.
You can understand why.
Excellent.
All creating characters and coming up with stories and performing a little bit and figuring out what your character's motivation is and what happens next. It's great. It's great training for writers and probably actors and who knows.
I didn't have that. My friends, my little tribe was geeky, but not on the D&D level. Geeky.
Not that geeky.
Yeah, so we were comic guys. We were, film buffs, cartoon, anime fans. Because again, there's anime films in our time.
Yeah.
All right. We were about the same age. I would say we had films, not the series. That's why people talk to me about the series. Like that's too much. Like one of my guys got vested in Bleach, and that's multiple seasons. So dude, I cannot. This dude will do marathons just to catch up daily, like 6-hour marathons. I'm like, bro, I can't do that.
that's too much. Yeah,
that's dedication, son. I'm good. No matter how good it is, you tell me. Give me this. You know what? Nowadays, just ask ChatGPT. Give me a synopsis. Anyway, all right. So, when did your creative nature start to evolve? Then, if you will.
Oh, immediately. My mom, when she was alive, used to say that when I was a baby, she could just put me in the high chair with some blank pieces of paper and some crayons, and I was good for the day. She could just clean the whole house or do whatever she needed to do, and I would just happily entertain myself with some blank paper. So, as long as I've been able to hold a crayon, I've been doing some version of this.
Oh, love it. All right, so again, doodling those epic battle scenes of the martyrs of homework. The storytelling come or the art first, or you kind of figure it out all at once. During sequence, if you will.
Yeah, I think if you're a kid who likes to draw, at least this is the way it happened for me, was that if you like to draw, you figure out fairly quickly that if you make up a story, let's say you like to draw dinosaurs, so you come up with a story that involves dinosaurs, and then you get to draw a bunch of them. So I think that's where for cartoonists like myself, that's where the storytelling angle kicks in. There's something you like to draw, and so you give yourself a reason to draw it a bunch. Like I say, at least that's how it was for me.
Got it. All right. So what steps do you take then to nurture further that creative spirit of yours as you were, growing up, if you will, and stepping into, your profession?
Yeah, I mean, there was always lots of, reading comics, trying to copy what I saw being done in comics.
Who was your favorite creative team?
Like when I was a kid, it was still, like I said, Batman was kind of my original, thing when I was really little. So, it was still kind of the Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams days.
Oh, beautiful stuff.
And then, as I got a little older, it got into kind of Jim Aparo and artists like that. And so,
shout out to the machine. That Aparo one is like, he said that for him that was his, perfect Batman artist.
Right.
For me, it would be him and Adams too, because Adams really, also this fuck boy, he was the monster.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as I got older into my teen years, it became more about like fantasy comics and stuff, like Conan the Barbarian and DC's The Warlord. And
Warlord wild? I love Warlord because it's like, you see a motherfucker with a sword and a gun.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he was the best. He was ready. He was ready for anything. But also started reading prose fantasy and stuff around that age. And then as I got older, kind of into my later teens, I started discovering alternative comics and stuff like you do, and older comics. I got really into Will Eisner, who is a big inspiration for me.
The Titan is releasing a nice thing of law on him right now. I mean, of the run. So it's going to be pretty kick-ass.
Yeah. I love when I discovered Will Eisner. That's when it really took that this was the medium for me.
Nice.
Yeah, Will Eisner's my guy.
Okay, wonderful. So, when you found that on your own, or was it presented to you?
It's an interesting story. The first professional comics creator I ever met was Ty Templeton.
Cool.
Who a lot of your listeners will probably know his work.
Absolutely. How did you do this?
Exactly. It was at a small comics convention in Toronto in 1991. I was 19 years old. I went off to Toronto with my little sample pages that I was going to show to some artists. And it was him and Adam Hughes and I think Graham Nolan.
Oh, it was damn. Three guests. Bro. What?
Yeah. 3 guests. It was not like the conventions we have today, but a nice little thing in a hotel lobby. And I showed Ty. He was the first one I went up to, and I showed him my stuff. And I don't know if you've ever met him or talked to him, but he's such a good.
I've not met Ty yet. No.
He's like such a good teacher of comics. He's such a good instructor, and I'm sure my pages were terrible when I was that age. But he took each page, flipped it over, kind of laid it out the way he would lay it out, and explained his thinking as he went along. And then at the end of that, he said, you should go get the book, Comics and Sequential Art by Will Eisner. And it'll take you the rest of the way. I kind of got you started and go get that book and learn the rest. And so I did immediately. And that book, if you know it, has some spirit stories from the 40s in it. And so that got me really into the spirit. So I went to my comic shop that I was going to in those days. And, they had a big box full of the old black and white kitchen sink reprints of the spirit. And so I just bought, they were like $0.25 a piece. I just bought the whole box.
He said, I'll take this.
Yeah. So that's how I got into Will Eisner, was actually Ty Templeton turned me on to his work.
Oh, cool, man. Big salute to Ty and WEPA. The journey that obviously helped open up, then holy shit. So how about then putting your first works out there? When did that begin? That journey of you actually, setting foot into the professional world. Was it easy? Was it pre-internet or post-internet or in the interim of internet?
It was kind of, I kind of arrived just about the time the internet did.
Okay.
I always wanted to be a comics creator. That was always the goal. But at the time I kind of showed up and was about to try to start a career in the early 90s. It was just a terrible time. There has been there had been a big, huge crash in the market, and even guys who were, been veterans for decades couldn't get work anymore with Marvel or DC. And things were just kind of iffy for a while. So I kind of went off and did something else. I did a lot of commercial illustration and stuff for a while. But somewhere in there, by the late 90s, I started doing a web comic on my website, not because I thought anything was going to come of it, but just to scratch that storytelling itch. Because I was drawing for a living, which was great, but I wasn't telling stories, which is what I really wanted to do. And so my web comic, and this is back in the days when there were 6 people doing web comics in 1999 and 2000. It was a lot easier. It was a lot easier to stand out. And one of the people reading my strip was a comic book writer named Jay Torres. Again, somebody your audience may be familiar with. He had been working for Marvel and stuff a little bit at the time. And he was doing a book for Oni Press and thought I might be a good artist for it. So he ended up pitching me as the artist for this series he was going to do, which became a graphic novel called Days Like This, which was my first graphic novel in 2003.
Wow.
And that was how I ended up getting in. Like I say, I kind of threw up my hands and had kind of given up. But then somebody kind of discovered my work and kind of brought me in and held the door open for me, which was nice.
Interesting. I mean, all right. So when you stepped in, I mean, was there any unexpected things that you thought, that that in your process of learning? Because now you got your first, like, all right, pro gig. Anything surprising about it, in that journey of learning?
What was kind of interesting was that, fortunately, it was with Oni Press, who at that time, like, nearly 25 years ago now, was really willing to try anything. They were really just out there swinging for the fences and trying new stuff. And like I said, I was a little older because it had taken 10 years or so that I didn't expect to break in. So I was about 30 rather than, being 21. And so I had matured a bit. And so I think what happened in that time was I realized that, especially when I saw some of the other stuff that Oni was doing, I realized, I don't have to draw in that Marvel and DC house style that I was trying to do 10 years ago. Okay. I can just be myself and do my own thing and, kind of draw in the style that I had developed in my commercial illustration work. And so that's what I did. So I guess if anything, I kind of learned that was that, my job wasn't to draw comics that looked like other comics. My job was to draw comics that looked like my comics.
Yeah,
and
baby,
that,
that's funny.
Prioritize the storytelling instincts that I thought were important. So, there you go. I guess that's what I learned.
Yeah, let's talk about this book though, because you got this book, and we talking about it's a series, man. Like, we got some stuff that's gonna be popping up. Hello, here we go, volume 1 right here. Boom!
Oh yeah, there.
Three Thieves starts right now. This book has action, humor, and some sneaky heist vibes. So talk to me, man. What's the initial spark that made you say, I gotta tell this story?
Yeah. This book, and in fact, this whole Three Thieves series, which is 7 books long, is actually older work of mine that is coming back into print from Papercutz, which I'm very grateful for. So this first book, I actually started writing back in 2006, nearly 20 years ago now. Crazy. And it really started because I really had no intention of becoming like a children's cartoonist or a fantasy cartoonist. Like the work I had been doing was more adult and historical to that point. But I had kids and my older son, who's going to be 22 this year, when he was 3 years old, he asked if I could write a story with a castle in it. And that's all it takes to set you off if you're a writer, especially if it's your kid asking. But somebody gives you a prompt like that and you start thinking, oh, well, who lives in the castle and what's their problem and what are they doing to try to solve it and who's against them and why? And pretty soon you're off to the races and you've written a 7-book fantasy series. But so I really should thank my son and do often for the 9 years worth of work that he ended up providing me. But this first book, which you just showed, if anyone has read it or is going to read it, you'll notice that page 2 is a splash page of a castle. So, I got my son's requirement in on page 2 and then just did whatever I wanted for 7 more books.
They left you alone right after. You got your castle killed. Thank you. I love it, but it is a wonderful book. I read that first volume. I got fully invested in the characters, man, and all this world building. This main trio here, right? Dessa, Topper, and Fisk, right? They each bring their own unique flavor, right? So if you were assembling a real life heist team, which one of them would you trust the most, and which one would 100% get you caught?
Well, Fisk is the most trustworthy. He's the big purple guy here. He's kind of the dependable older brother type of the trio. So yeah, he's definitely the guy who you would trust the most. And the one most likely to get you in trouble is the little blue guy here, Topper, he's the one of the 3 thieves who is actually a thief. He's a pickpocket. they're all circus performers, and he kind of
Yeah.
brings them into the adventure and you know, gets them into this harebrained scheme he's concocted. But he's the one who is actually interested in getting the gold and picking people's pockets and all that stuff. He's definitely the troublemaking younger brother of the trio.
Oh shit, I dig it. So, how did these creations come to life in your mind? What was the day? So, you know, again, I got to create these guys. This is the universe that I'm creating here. Like, how did this all really? Again, you see, all these years working on it. Like, what was inspiration? Any real life inspirations from family within these characters?
Yeah, a little bit. I actually had the two characters I was just showing you, Topper and Fisk, that we were talking about. I've actually had versions of those characters in my sketchbooks going back to like my days at university when I was probably 19 or 20 when I first met Ty Templeton back in those days. Yeah, they're characters that have always just been percolating in my head, and I kind of knew their basic personalities and what they looked like. And you know, the story came later, and Dessa, who's the main character here, the red-haired girl who's the circus acrobat and is our protagonist throughout the series, she came later too. I always knew that Topper and Fisk were going to be sidekicks, but I wasn't sure whose sidekick they were or what the story was. But when something came up for them to do, I definitely slotted them into a story in those roles.
And had some fun. Because you just mentioned Dessa, so you know, Dessa, you know, a strong lead, at least in what I've read, and with a lot of heart. So, you know, what's something about her that maybe that fans might not pick up on right away, but it's super important to her character?
Oh, that's interesting. I'm trying to do it without spoiling anything to come for the rest of the series. Yeah, just there's definitely more there than meets the eye. When we first meet her, she's like 13 years old, but she's still very much a child. She's going to grow up a lot through the series. So there are definitely more depths to that character coming. In this first book, she's very much, you know, a troublemaker like Topper, you know, very much kind of ready for anything, very much, just
very righteous.
Yeah. She, lots of interesting stuff is going to go on with her. She's going to grow up a lot during the series.
I like the character. Yeah. I like the whole tree. I like the mix, the way you do. You know, it makes personalities. Yeah. You know, that's great. She's
going to grow up a lot, but she's always going to be fun. She's, you know, kind of a fun, swashbuckling character, and you know, despite the personal growth that's coming, she's going to stay that fun, swashbuckling character. I assure you.
Wonderful. See, because again, you within this book, you had this incredible knack for mixing adventure with humor. I definitely chuckled a few times. So, what's the secret sauce to balancing thrills and laughs, you know, in a story like this?
Honestly, I'm not sure I could put my finger on like a, you know, mathematical equation for it.
You can't give me that wizardry dungeon master.
Yeah, like it seems to come just fairly naturally. Like even when I'm writing, like really, like I talked before about my more kind of adult historical work. This is the book I'm best known for here in Canada, which is called Two Generals, which is about my grandfather's experiences in World War II. And so it's, you know, can get pretty dark and kind of solemn, but it also has some humor in it. People often tell me when they've read it, like they were surprised that they laughed in a few places. Because war is absurd, right? And, you know, there are definitely funny scenes in that book. So I think that just regardless of what I'm writing, humor finds its way in. It doesn't seem to be a thing that it's not like I'm like so naturally funny or anything. It's just, I just find that whatever story I'm telling, if I'm writing about characters who are funny, and they often are, then, you know, I can assure myself that they will find the humor in whatever situation they're in. I don't know if I could make it more concrete than that. I definitely know people who are humor writers who have made this a matter of math and they know that, okay, the joke goes here. I'm not like that. I mostly just kind of feel it. You just kind of sense, okay, we need the moment to lighten a bit right here. But sometimes I don't really feel that until I'm writing it or even until I'm drawing it. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, I wish I could give some people out there advice on how to balance the two. But I think if you're someone for whom those are balanced, it just comes out.
Gotcha. And sometimes you just got to get into that zone, and get yourself into that space and, start getting creative, right?
Yeah. Like I say, at some point, the characters just kind of take over. And if the characters are funny characters, then funny stuff's going to happen.
Yeah. And I think, again, creating that vast universe, I mean, how big is this universe going to get, just outside of volume 1? Because, again, you introduced so many cool characters, and I'm seeing, you're doing some really great world building. So it goes to show how we were talking about that Dungeon Master stuff. Wow, is that really coming to play here like that?
Yeah. I mean, thank you. I'm actually not that into world building. I'm not that concerned about it when I'm writing. For me, it's always kind of story first. I know a lot of writers, particularly fantasy writers, will, they'll have the whole map and they'll know every stone on the road of the journey that the characters are going to take. I am just definitely not that kind of writer. I want the story to sort of take the lead and for the world to take shape, as the story happens, as I need it to. And, obviously with a series, especially like 7 books, like Three Thieves is, you can paint yourself into a bit of a corner. There's book 2 coming in June 24th, I think.
Yeah, man. That cover.
Oh, yep. I love that cover. Captive Prince. The 3rd book is coming in October. The nice thing is that because these books are already done, Squire and Knight is my book from 2023 from First Second.
Really? Look at this.
Also, like a fun YA fantasy. Wayward Travelers is the sequel to Squire and Knight. Bix is another historical adult thing I did a few years ago. Which
as a award nominee, baby. Look at you, baby. WEPA!
What was I talking about? World building. Yeah, I just kind of let the world take shape as I need as I go along and kind of hope for the best. If people do follow along with the Three Thieves books, they're going to see that, because the story is about these 3 being on the run. There's some knights chasing them, and it's going to be a whole big chase that lasts through 7 books. Every book they're kind of in a new place, and so each book I could add a little bit to the world as I needed it. And I had a vague sense that they're going west. They're traveling west toward the ocean. That's about all that I knew when I started out. But as they got there, I was able to figure out what's between where they started and the ocean. And that's enough world building for me and clearly enough for the audience. So, there's no map. Some people are like, "Oh, it's a fantasy book. Shouldn't there be a map?" In the opening pages. I'm like, nah. People can make their own map if they're that
interested.
Maybe
when it's over, how about you kickstart a whole big map made out of leather? Here we
go. Yeah, man. Somebody else can draw it because I don't care. Like I say, they're vaguely heading west. It would just be the map of,
You just want to see them haul ass and see how they get out of trouble. Let's learn this story, baby.
To me, the story is really paramount, and the world building supports that, and no more. I didn't want to go down a lot of fantasy writers are just trying to be Tolkien, who was an expert with this kind of stuff and was an expert in history and an expert in languages and all that stuff. And it's great for him that he put all that work into the background world and stuff. But other people trying to do it, usually just strike me as spinning their tires in the sand.
Talk to me about bringing this baby over to Papercutz. How did that happen, and why Papercutz was a good home for this?
Yeah, I had after the 7 books were done, I had a bit of a falling out with the original publisher, which was a children's book publisher here in Canada called Kids Can Press. And they had tried, like a lot of book publishers, they had tried to get into graphic novels and had a little bit of success with it. But yeah, this I won't get into all the reasons why that relationship fell apart, but it did. And so my agent and I took the rights back to the books and started trying to shop them around other places. And that took longer than we thought it was going to. But this deal with Papercutz appeared kind of almost out of nowhere. Adam Walenta, who's my editor there on these new versions, was a fan of the books in their original editions. And when he started working at Papercutz, he shot me an email and said, I love your stuff. I'd love you to pitch me something. And I told him, well, the rights to Three Thieves are available.
Yeah. Oh boy, I got something for you.
Yeah. So he was very excited about that. So, I connected him and my agent, and things worked themselves out pretty quickly.
Oh, bless.
Sometimes it's just a matter of waiting for the right editor or the right company or just the planets to align. As they sometimes do. Sometimes it's just your time, and sometimes it's not your time, and there's you either get lucky or you don't.
Yeah. So talking about that, right? Let's say someone wants to be a comic book creator, right? But has no clue at all where the hell to start. What's the first step, in your opinion, they should take, especially nowadays? Well, you started when it was tough, man. Early internet. Now I think it's easier, but that's my opinion. I don't know what but you're an actual creator. You tell me.
Yeah, the internet does make it easier to put your stuff out there, for low cost, which is nice. The downside is that 25 years later than when I started, there are a lot more than 6 webcomics out there. Like I said earlier, it was easier to get my webcomic noticed when there was only about half a dozen of them. Everyone and their uncle has a webcomic now. So, you've got to be really good to get noticed, but that's kind of good too. A little bit of competition makes everybody better. Right. I would definitely suggest starting a webcomic or something like that gives you a reason to draw every day and to write stories every day. Like anything, practice. I always told my kids when they were young, it's the most boring parent thing you can say to a kid, but you got to practice. If you want to be good at the piano or basketball or making comics or whatever it is, you got to put your hours in. You got to practice, man. I made sure they knew, you don't have to practice soccer, but somewhere across town, there's some kid who's practicing soccer and he's going to get on the team.
And they're going to embarrass the shit out of you,
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So, the same is true with the comics business, right? The people who are putting their time in and just cranking out pages and learning, from those pages and doing it every day. Those are the people who are those are the people who are going to get good and who are going to have careers. I think the first thing I would say is start a webcomic or some kind of project that gets you drawing every day, and also just to read as many good comics as you can. Seek out the good stuff. Like for me, it was Will Eisner's Comics and Sequential Art that Ty Templeton recommended, which was a nice education in how to make comics and how to tell stories visually. These days, there's also, of course, Scott McCloud's books, Understanding Comics and Making Comics and Reinventing Comics, which will get you thinking about this stuff really deeply, in terms of the choices you're making when you're telling a story visually on the page or on the screen, as it may be. Just immerse yourself in that stuff. I would also recommend film, if not film classes, then at least reading film books and getting some film theory in. I think you can overstate the connection between comics and movies, but they are close cousins, and cinema has a developed critical language that comics are only just developing. So I have found, like, I majored in film theory and also did some postgraduate animation work. And I found my experience with film and animation really informs my comics, like in terms of, choices of, shots, like, composition of panels, the way characters perform, timing, especially like my animation training. Like you mentioned yourself, how, kind of like, snappy and fun this first Three Thieves book is. That's my animation training talking.
It flowed as such, I see it, because you're absolutely a comic book for me is basically a movie storyboard, and it should have been that a long time ago, man. Because don't you see what all that good content is at? They gotta stop. Big shout out to Big Rito Noir, baby, Element in hip hop. Salute, great shows. Tune into them, I think today even like at 7:00 EST. Great show. They talk about comics, movies, everything. I mean, and that did his intro. Yeah, yo. It's a good
Woo!
Yeah, yo. Yeah, man. Doing the things. I love it. And follow my man here. Everybody gotta follow him. Everybody's tuning in. Thank you for tuning in. I see you guys. You gotta follow. I see your little accounts. They're gonna be in the notes too. All right.
There you go. Yeah, follow me on all the socials. At least the ones I'm on.
Don't
follow me on the ones I'm not on. What was that?
Look what he says. He says Marvel has instructed their writers to create comics as fodder for the MCU. So, as a creator, what do you think about something like that? Do you think that impedes on your creative freedom?
Yeah, Marvel is tough and has a weird history of exploiting creators and stuff. They've done some great books over the years, and obviously people have done some great work there. I personally have not pursued that kind of work. Just because I think it would be weird, making work that somebody else owns. And I know a lot of, I have a lot of friends who write and draw for Marvel and DC, and I go see the Marvel movies and I love them as much as anyone else does, but I can definitely pick out, my friend created that, and my friend drew the panel that shot is based on.
I
can see my friend's work on the screen, and I know they're not getting paid for that. And so it's tough. It's a little of both. It's if you grew up wanting to draw Spider-Man, then more power to you drawing Spider-Man. But that work arrangement certainly does have its downsides. So hopefully creators now are going into it with their eyes open, and they're being exploited, but hopefully they're getting some money for knowing how exploited they are.
And also, after they see that Stan Lee documentary, that's already controversial, because even though it's about exploiting Stan Lee, they feel like I did that documentary was also exploiting Stan Lee.
Yeah.
It's a whole conversation to see nowadays.
There's a whole circle of exploitation in comics. It kind of depends on where you're at in the circle.
Yeah. Well, you know what? We're not talking about exploitation. We're talking about some dope stuff that my man here is making. I mean, within the world of Three Thieves. You know what? So, it's time for hypotheticals, Scott. I gotta ask you here.
Okay.
Right? So, Dessa and her crew suddenly get teleported into a completely different genre, sci-fi, horror, or even superhero. Which one would be the funniest in which they would interact, and why?
Ooh, what were the choices? Sci-fi, horror,
or superhero?
Okay, I'm gonna take superhero out of the mix, because then their like circus performer skills aren't so great if everyone has super powers. Sci-fi might be fun. In fact, I think I may have originally envisioned these characters. I was talking earlier about how I had them kind of in my sketchbooks going back years and years and didn't know what to do with them. I think at some point I was trying to like figure out some space pirate kind of story around them.
Okay.
So I'm going to go with sci-fi. I think the characters, sci-fi and fantasy are kind of two sides of the same coin. Yeah. It's just, it's a lot of the same tropes, but just, whether it's the past or the future, right? So I kind of think these characters would work in a sci-fi milieu pretty well. I'm breaking out some French there.
And I consider the homie being very devious, especially if these aliens or whatever have something of value.
Absolutely. And so instead of just going west to the ocean, they could just be going across like the star system to, the outer rim or whatever. Like it would still work. Instead of going from town to town, they'd go from planet to planet. I think it'd work just fine. Maybe I'll do it.
Let me ask you, final question, bro.
Sure.
Not final. I'm gonna have two more, but this is the final on this line that we gotta know where we're gonna be. But final question on this: if Three Thieves were food, what would it be and why? And don't say a sandwich unless it's got layers as complex as the story.
If Three Thieves was a food, I mean, it would definitely be something delicious, but also like there's some real. I'm not saying meat, but there's some meat to this series. It's got some like thematic weight to it. I think people will be surprised by the time they get to the end that this book has got some weight. Like maybe like it's like a bowl of fruit or something. It's like tastes good. It's got the sugars, but it's natural sugars, and it's good for you. You know what I mean? It's not vegetables, but it's fruit. It's a delicious bowl of fruit. You can pick your favorite. You can pick your favorite fruits.
It's a medley of sweetness. There we go.
Exactly.
I dig it. And, all right. So, are you gonna make any appearances? During this year, any conventions where we could get a signed copy of the book? What's popping?
I am mostly head down in a couple of new projects right now. I'm trying to think if I have anything coming up. I've been invited to a couple of shows in the U.S., but I'm kind of deciding whether I want to go to them or not. We're gonna see if
don't hate all of us because it was. Come on, man.
We'll see how relations go between our two countries. I'm a bit iffy on whether I'm going to go to those shows or not. But I'm mostly I've mostly kind of retired from tabling at shows. I do a lot of store signings. I do kind of signings with my publisher wherever they might be. I don't really have a lot coming up I can think of. I don't think. Sorry, I wish I could use the plug that you're giving me here, but
it's all right. But what's the plug on the book? All right, Volume 1 is available now. What's going on there? What's
Volume 1? Volume 1 is available now wherever you buy books. Right, your comic shop, your local bookstore, Amazon if you absolutely must. All that stuff. Volume 2, which you showed, The Sign of the Black Rock, comes out in June. Volume 3 comes out in October. Like I say, the nice thing is these books are already done, so Papercutz is going to be able to bring them out back to back to back. It's going to be great.
Nice. So it's what an every 2 month schedule type?
It's like one per season, so it might be one every 3 or 4 months. Yeah.
Oh, nice. So, and will there be even more stories beyond what's already been created?
Not so far. I kind of, without giving away ending of book 7, it ends in such a way that people have often been like, are you going to do more? Are you going to do a second series or a sequel? But I really kind of like that it ends in such a way that, kids or parents or whoever's reading can decide what happens next on their own. It ends in a way that people can kind of imagine their own sequel. And I like that about it. So at this point, no plans for more Three Thieves material. I think the 7 books kind of stand alone as a nice little thing in a journey and an adventure, and I think that's enough. But never. I've learned to never say never. So
and then we're just gonna get a whole bunch of different stuff from the Chantlerverse, if we will, baby.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I say, I got a couple things on the go now, and hopefully people will like those just as much.
Folks, if you want to stay tuned to everything that Scott is doing, please follow Scott on his website at scottchantler.com, Instagram, Scott Chantler, and Blue Sky, Scott Chantler. as well. All over. He owns his name hardcore everywhere. Big boss. So, follow him. Stay tuned to everything that my man is doing. Because, again, this series, I read Volume 1. Comic Crusaders to prove real talk. I really dug the series. I had fun reading it. I was really engaged. And he came on right on time. I was like, I just finished reading it. It's exciting. Yeah, XIXC. Thank you for tuning in. You rock. Thank you, XICX. Jesus Christ. I need glasses. All right. But yeah, for real, thanks for tuning in. 6 Element, everybody else that has not commented. But I see you guys. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. But support creators like my man over here. Doing original stories, original books. Big salute to Papercutz again. And again, don't get misconstrued because it's YA. It's not just for kids. For real. I'm an adult and I thoroughly enjoyed the book. I didn't read it as an adult. A YA book. I was like, you know what? It's just a good story, a adventure story. You dig it.
I like to cast a wide net.
And it's not dumbed down either.
Yeah.
It's not a dumbed down book. You're not talking baby language.
When I'm writing, I just try to tell a good story. I let the marketing department worry about who to sell it to. But yeah, I want to appeal to the kids. I want to appeal to the parents. I want to appeal to grandma. I want to appeal to the dog. I want the whole family.
What about cats? Come on, even cats got to be.
Cats. Get cats in there. Absolutely.
Everything. All parrots, everything. All animals, every species loves this book. I'm telling you. And
bring them in. Bring them all in.
It's available now, mi gente. So thank you, Scott, for hanging out. I appreciate you. And again, all you Crusaders out there, I appreciate you. All the links below. Show love to Indy. Thank you so love to Comic Crusaders. For real, I appreciate you. Hasta la próxima, baby. WEPA!
Thanks, man.
Thank you for listening to the Comic Crusaders podcast. If you like the content, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Also, please visit comiccrusaders.com and our extended podcast family over at undercovercapes.com. And also, make sure to download the Comic Crusaders app on the Google Play Store today.